and welcome to Bond Never Dies. I am your host, Jeremy Evans. Along with me, my other host along on this mission is Mr. Travis Hanna. How you doing, Travis?
Doing good.
So, Travis, for this show, for our listeners coming into our episode 0, we kind of want to just talk about what are our goals of the show and why do we like Bond so much. So, for you guys don't know, this is going to be a 007 podcast where we be going through all the James Bond films, starting with the Sean Connery, then Roger Moore, then Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, to Daniel Craig, and maybe we might, after our little series of about 25 episodes, if we hear about a new Bond in the future, maybe we'll come back. But for now, this will be part of our cycle of the bi-weekly of this podcast I'm setting up. But we want to talk about why do we decide to do James Bond. So, Travis, can you give me a couple highlights? Like, why do you like James Bond so much, and why did you want to do this with me?
Well, I think every guy likes James Bond. Anytime a guy puts on a tuxedo, the first thing they think is, yeah, I could be James Bond.
Right.
You know, for me, though, it's got to be the gadgets. I 100% love all the gadgets. The Daniel Craig stuff has left me a little bit wanting, but in between all the other Bonds, I think that's just the most imaginative part of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. I always like James Bond because, and I started in the Pierce Brosnan era where, everything had to be smooth. Like, everything he did was smooth. And you always kind of look at that as like, wow, he does everything was just like he was already prepared for it. And even if he's not prepared, it feels like he knew it all the time. It was just so funny going to that and then falling back to the Sean Connery where the smoothness actually began, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know this, that, going back, that there was other Bonds, other actors that played Bond. I just didn't know there was an era of different actors. When you're young, you're like, this is when Bond first began, and this is where it's going to go after that. So it's interesting to find out that there's different Bonds in this generation, and it's interesting that, the music and everything, they really highlight these moments for James Bond. A James Bond because he always has, a great action scene at the beginning, followed by a song dedicated to James Bond or whatever the movie is, and then straight to the movie. So, for the listeners, we just want to take that voyage and go back. Now, granted, we have not watched these movies in a very long time.
A long time.
So we decided, let's go back and just see if it's the way we thought it was growing up. And even the movies that, we don't even remember. There's a bunch of Bonds in these films. I don't remember watching this one. So there'll be some.
There are 25, right?
Yes.
So that's a lot of Bonds from the 1960s to now that we're going to try and cover. And I watched a lot of these growing up. My dad was a Bond fan. My brother is a movie file. So whenever he and I were alone, a lot of time we watched James Bond. So yeah, it's been a long time since I saw Dr. No and a lot of the original stuff. Mm-hmm.
So I know there's going to be a question that's going to come between about us, but I want to know, why do you think Bond's still continuing to us? What makes you think Bond is still legendary? Movies are still being made. Because of course Bond is still popular. When it comes out, people still go see Bond. Why do you think that?
Well, I think Bond is not a superhero, but he's a superhero. Mm-hmm. He's an average guy who just has training. He's got, like I said before, really cool gadgets. He's essentially a toned down version of Batman. He doesn't wear a costume. He wears a tuxedo. Mm-hmm. He's smooth. He can get all the ladies. All the ladies want to be with him. What guy doesn't want that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Even if you're a gay guy, I would imagine that you have an attraction to James Bond. Mm-hmm. And whenever you put on a tuxedo, you still compare yourself to James Bond. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's just that smooth suaveness, like what you were talking about with Pierce Brosnan. Every guy wants that. And not every guy can be that because not every guy is that guy.
Or British.
Right.
I think why Bond's still going, because I think James Bond was I don't want to say he's the inventor, but I believe he's the one that invented in the movie of espionage and action. I think he was the first one that kind of to start that going. And ever since, there's been a lot of secret agent movies that I think that Bond influence through the cycle of our times in agent movies. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree that he has had a heavy influence, but there were spy stories way before.
Of course.
Like detective story. I mean, that's basically what Bond is a detective.
Mm-hmm.
He's hired by a British agency to go and stop a threat. And in this one, he actually starts out investigating a missing person.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a way, he is a detective, like Batman,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he has had a huge influence. Huge influence. There's a movie called In Like Flint,
Mm-hmm.
which is a total, I almost say spoof of James Bond, but it takes itself very seriously. And when I say spoof, if you guys haven't seen In Like Flint, there's two movies, Our Man Flint and In Like Flint. I believe Our Man Flint is the first one, and In Like Flint is the second one. But he literally, in Like Flint, is trying to break down dolphin speak so that he can talk to dolphins. And there's a scene where he actually does it, and it's just ridiculous, but it's a fun movie.
Okay.
But he's totally set up to be like a suave James Bond type character.
Okay. I want to say that Austin Powers was a big influence of
100%.
that. Even though he is, see, I always debate, I think he's half Lazenby and half Roger Moore, because the movie titles are based, I think, more on Roger Moore stuff, and then except for Goldfinger, but or Goldmember, and part of it is Lazenby because how Austin acts like George Lazenby's 007 to me. The very kind of a goofy, dangling kind of person-ish. And remember, remember that other spoof, Casino Royale, before actual Casino Royale.
Correct.
And I believe, was that Woody Allen that directed?
Woody Allen,
yeah. So I honestly, tell you the truth, I have never seen that old Casino Royale. I have not.
I own it. I don't think I've ever watched it.
Okay.
But also you can't forget the Avengers. The guy, I can't remember his first name, something Steele, and Mrs. Peel, they, Uma Thurman.
Oh, and, those Ray Avengers. Fiennes, yeah.
Modern day movie that was pretty terrible, but they were British agents, and he had the bowler hat and was really refined.
You could say that with the Kingsman.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with that.
And Get Smart.
100% would Get Smart.
So let's go into... But now, granted, we wanted to get this episode out because this one out for people to listen because it's more for us that we want to tell at the time what is our favorite list of different categories in Bond, and then hopefully at the end of our voyage in the Bond world, we'll see if that list changed.
Okay.
So that's why I'm very excited to come back and I said this was my favorite. I don't know how I feel about it now, and so we're gonna go into our favorite movies. These are not ranked. None of these are ranked except for our favorite Bonds. But all the movies, music, and whatever, these are not ranked. So let's go ahead and go with our favorites of the movies. So Travis, what is your 5 favorites?
My top 5 are GoldenEye, Thunderball, Moonraker, The Living Daylights, and The Spy Who Loved Me.
Okay. And then my list would be Dr. No, Tomorrow Never Dies, The Spy Who Loved Me, Goldfinger, and Skyfall. Okay, so now let's go into our rank of our favorite Bonds. Travis?
Now, this is in order. Sean Connery, Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig, Timothy Dalton, and Roger Moore is at the end because he's Roger Moore.
Right. Mine is basically exactly the same list as his. I think it's always been that the top 3 were the ones you could switch around. I think maybe the new generation might think Daniel Craig might be number 1, but Sean Connery to me has to be at least number 2 or number 3 to people. To me, I could be wrong though.
Well, I had I told when we were making this list, I had a hard time with Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig. To me, there's not a lot of there's not huge difference between a lot of the Bonds. So it's not like with the Joker where you have Jack Nicholson and what's his name?
Jack Nicholson and what movie again?
The Dark Knight series.
The Dark Knight. Jack Nicholson. Heath Ledger. That's who it is. Yeah, sorry.
People. Those are 2 drastically different Jokers. you know, but they're both really good Jokers.
Right.
You know, with Bond, it's all kind of the same stuff. He's a smooth talker. You know, he knows how to get into places. He's got great one-liners. You know, that kind of thing. For me, Sean is at the top because he is the genesis. That's where it all started. I really enjoyed Daniel Craig, and I really enjoyed Pierce Brosnan. I have some issues with Daniel Craig's movies, but that's not a take on Daniel Craig himself. So for me, Pierce and Daniel are interchangeable for 2 and 3.
I think I agree with Sean. The Pierce Brosnan to me is because he's the first Bond I grew up with. He was my Bond for that generation, so that's why he was definitely number 2. I like Daniel Craig, and it's funny too because you know Daniel Craig and Timothy Dalton are kind of similar. You know, they are pretty damn hardcore with their stuff. Maybe Daniel's a little bit smoother than Tim, but not by that much. And then of course Roger is Roger.
Right.
Which is funny because Roger, I believe, has the most entries in the 007 series.
I'm not sure. I'd have to count.
Yeah, I'll look at the list later, but I'm pretty sure he has the most entries in this. Because even though Roger is the lowest, a lot of women at that time really loved them some Roger Moore. I tell you what. And speaking of ladies, let's go into our Bond girls. Okay. So I'll go ahead and go first this time.
Sure.
I'll go with Honey Rider from Dr. No, Pussy Galore from Goldfinger. I want to say now, guys, I'm sorry, I don't know every single one where Bond from. I have to go back and look, and I didn't write it down. But Enya,
Zinnia.
I think it's Zinnia. I forgot which one she's in, but
Zinnia on the top from GoldenEye.
No, not her. I believe she was in. I want to say she's in The Spy Who Loved Me. That actress.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's who I wrote down, but I'll go back and look at it in a minute. Wei Lin from Tomorrow Never Dies, and then Electra King, and she was in World's Not Enough, I believe. Right. Yeah. So we'll talk about that later. Yeah. Go on.
I always liked Pussy Galore and Mayday.
And Mayday's from A View to a Kill?
I think it's A View to a
Kill. Okay.
Another one where I think they're in Jamaica.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
Then Zinnia Onatop, I thought she was a really interesting villain. Of course, played by Jean Grey. I can't ever remember.
I know who you're talking about. For people that watch X-Men.
Yeah, I can't ever remember her real name or pronounce it properly, so forgive me. Wei Lin from Tomorrow Never Dies. She was a kick-ass sidekick, especially in that motorcycle scene. You know, and then Natasha from GoldenEye, I thought was a really interesting pick because she had to work with Bond and go in and do dangerous stuff so that she could deactivate the GoldenEye.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, it's funny too because she does remind me of Honey Rider a little bit, but we'll talk about that later. Let's go into our visuals and songs. So we'll go back and forth on this one. So my pick for visual and song, Skyfall. I really like the visual that I think it was a deep song. And we're not going to go into details because when you listen to the episodes, we'll go even more detail of what brought that to us. So Skyfall for me, your turn.
For me, I really enjoy the opening to Casino Royale. I like the way it's done up to where the bullets are the card symbols, you know, the hearts, the clubs, diamonds. It's very Mad Men-esque, you know, which is kind of cool. And I believe it even like that came out before Mad Men. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it did. It might even be the same guy who designed, like whoever designed Casino Royale's opening.
You could be right.
Probably designed the opening to Mad Men. I should have looked into that.
Mine will be The Spy Who Loved Me. I really like The Spy Who Loved Me for that one. It's very gentle. I like how, and we found this out kind of doing like, you know, kind of watching some videos of it, that almost every girl and every Bond intro jumps. So this one, like, she's jumping and she's doing this, but it feels more free in this song. So your turn.
There's also a lot of hands.
Yes,
hands
a lot of hands
are a theme in the Bond movies.
Yes. They just want to caress him. They want to be all over him.
GoldenEye would be my next one.
Okay.
Tina Turner, I believe, sang that one. and it's a catchy song. Like I don't know, like I really enjoyed it.
And speaking of Golden, Goldfinger was one of my favorites. That one was just straight up like, you're gonna know who this person is,
Right?
And so, Tomorrow Never Dies was another one for me. I think it was Sheryl Crow. She
Yes.
did that song. Yeah.
Yep.
And then Thunderball. I think we both agreed Thunderball.
Thunderball was on my list too. Yeah.
And then separately, License to Kill was one of my favorite songs. Very 80-ish. And I believe your favorite 80-ish song is View to a Kill by Duran Duran. So
yeah, that one's pretty good. I also like Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die is good with Paul McCartney.
Yeah, was a good one too.
And so we can't wait to like get through these and like kind of analyze more of the song, because you brought something to my light. I didn't know that the intro is a very important thing, because it's trying to tell you a story at the same time, getting you prepared of like what's coming next.
Right.
And I never put that together.
Some of them like are on the nose, like straight up show you what's going to happen in the movie. And then a lot of them kind of give you a visual representation of what's going to occur, but you don't know how it's going to occur, and you don't know what's going to be important from that opening.
Right.
You know, so I always find that kind of interesting.
Okay. So with that, we are going to be wrapping this up in just a few minutes, but going into this, rewatching all these, what do you expect out of Bond going through these? Like, what are your expectations to see from Bond? Like, do you see him in a different light of what you want to see, or do you see something different?
You know, there's been a lot of argument about the moniker of 007. Just like for all of the comic book fans out there, the Nick Fury moniker. In the late 70s, all the way up through to modern day comic books, Nick Fury was a white guy. And then Samuel L. Jackson picked up the role, and now he's a black guy. A lot of people are now arguing, or have made the argument, that Nick Fury isn't really his name, but it's like his 007 name.
Okay.
You know, so I would like to find more correlation to where more actors could play Bond, because James Bond isn't the person, it's the moniker. And you know, guys like Idris Elba, I would love to see.
I would love to see that too.
You know, and if that's the case, then we can kind of break continuity with white dudes and kind of expand it out, and see who else we can get into that role, and you know, play with things.
Okay. So what about going through these movies in general, though? Like, what do you think you're going to see, like, going through this?
I want to fall in love again.
You want to fall in love with again? Okay.
I want to watch these old movies. I want to laugh at the ridiculousness of the production value at the time, because it was the 70s into the 80s into the 90s, before computers really were a thing.
And to credit, I give them credit back in the day, the best they can do with some of that stuff. But go on.
Oh, 100%. The car chases, they tried really hard. We'll talk about in Dr. No. But I just want to fall in love with what James Bond is, and that character. You know, now that I'm an adult, I want to see what kind of things I pick out.
The two things I want to look for is, I want to see for each actor, again, how they decide to how they portray Bond in a smooth way. Like, I need to go back and see, okay, what made your Bond smoother than this one? What makes your smoother stand out from the other Bond? You know, that's one thing I want to look at. And two, I really want to look at, again, how they decided to connect the stories of solving the mystery or investigating or the mission in general. Because, like, when I watch it, I just sit back and enjoy the ride and, you know, see the action scenes and everything. But I never sat there and wondered, like, okay, how did you connect this together to figure out that this person was behind it? And I never really focused that. So even starting up in our first episode you're going to be listening to soon, episode 1, we go Dr. No, I actually sat and listened to it, and it was actually really interesting how they decided to connect everything together. So I'm excited for that. Right.
And I actually have a theory, which we'll talk about in Dr. No, about the opening, that I noticed that I hadn't noticed before.
Okay.
So I'm real excited to get this started, man.
All right.
Let's do it.
So we're going to go ahead and head out. And after we sign off, definitely listen to our commercial at the end. It will give you all the information where you can find on our show and what days that we're going to be premiering the show and whatnot. So with that,
Ba-da, ba-da.